Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alabama Reloader here. It's a little bit different video than what we've been doing here. Lately, we've been working a lot with the Frankfurt Arsenal coax press. But today's video is just real quick. Hey, here's some, sort of the thought process I follow, or some things to think about whenever you're reloading for a rifle. Maybe it's not yours. In this case, this is my dad's Ruger American in 30-06. And I said, hey, I'll be more than happy to work up a hunt load for you. I bought, and I believe on a previous video, I mentioned maybe using these in 308, and I have load data for them from Spear for 308. But since he shoots 30-06, I have load data for that as well that they sent me. I'm just going to try to load them up in 30-06 and see how well they perform. So we're going to stick with H4350. I believe that's the only powder that I have that they had listed. They only had maybe 5 powders listed on the data that they sent me. And H4350 is the only one that I have that was listed there. So we're going to go with it, try to work up a load with these guys. So, but real quick, some of the things you want to think about. Obviously, this is a hunting setup. This is pretty basic, standard bolt action. I'm going to go shoot it a few times before hunting season to make sure the scope is still zeroed and it's hitting where, I'm aiming, and I'm just going to take off and go to the deer woods, and that's it. This isn't something, my dad's not big on just going to the range and shooting a whole lot. He never really has been. It's something he would like to do more of, but this is basically just his hunting gun, super lightweight. Let me grab it and go and shoot a deer with it, right? I mean, he's got a Conus, what is that? Just a Conus, regular 3-9x40 scope. Again, pretty just sort of run-of-the-mill setup. But we're going to see if we can turn it into a pretty good tack driver for him and send him home with a lot of ammo that shoots really well. So, but some things to think about, especially when you're loading for somebody else, even yourself. What's the max effective range? What's the end goal, right? What is the end result that you're trying to achieve? If you're simply wanting to punch paper, shoot the smallest groups possible and punch in paper, you may want to if it's your rifle, you may want to upgrade on something like this. Go with something a little bit different. If it's somebody else's in there, they hand you this setup and it's like, hey, let's just shoot the smallest groups possible. Okay, cool. But in this case, it's, hey, I want to shoot a deer. Okay, well, it's a hunting setup. All right. Well, how far? What's the max shot? What's the furthest shot that you're going to be taking? And of course, where we hunt, it's probably, I would say max would be a couple hundred yards, maybe. That would probably be the longest shot that he'll be taking with this rifle. So taking that into account, that's going to help in our bullet selection, whether we want to go, in terms of if you're just punching paper, punching steel at long distance, or okay, it's going to be a hunting rig. Well, that's going to help determine your bullet selection, our bullet weight, going for sectional density, so that way we can really penetrate, punch through whatever it is we're shooting. Bullet design. All right, these guys right here, this is the new Spear Impact, basically what they came out with to compete with the Sierra Game Changers and the Hornady ELDX and all the polymer whiz bang bullets that are now released. So we're going to go with that, and that way we can just destroy a deer 200 yards and in. So you got to think about your components. What's the end result? What that's going to drive? That's going to help drive your bullet selection. And then, of course, load data on something like this, because it's fairly new. I had to reach out to, it won't focus. I had to reach out to Spear and say, hey, I need some load data. I can't just select a 190 grain bullet from any manufacturer and assume that the load data translates over to this guy, because it doesn't. I'll be the first to tell you that. I actually loaded up some of these in 308. I loaded up 5 to see if they would, shoot halfway decent. And I think it might have been a Nosler 190 grain projectile. It might have been Hornady. I picked somebody's 190 grain projectile, and I was like, I'll just copy that load data. Wrong. I was way off on Varget, on a Varget load, Hodgdon Varget load. So you can't, and luckily I got the load data in time from Spear, and I was able to go back, pull all the bullets, and reload those guys with a more appropriate charge. So you definitely want to have some manufacturer's load data, from the bullet manufacturer, if at all possible. When it's something like this is a unique situation. So got that. That'll help determine your components. Once you have the list of powders, okay, here's what maybe you have on hand, or you want to go out and pick up another powder to test with. And then from there, one of the real, basically the critical dimension is cartridge overall length. Spear, the load data that they provided, the test cartridge overall length, so the total length from the base to the tip, was 3.320 inches. Okay, 3.320 inches is what they tested. Now, this is where it kind of is a big deal. All right, this is where this guy comes into play. So I just tested this in this rifle, and 3.315 is where this bullet, and I did it with a handful of them, back and forth, and I'm coming up with the same number. This is where this projectile starts to hit the lands of the rifling. Okay, that's a big deal, because if we loaded it to 3.320, then that means we're jammed into the lands 5,000ths with a projectile that I'm not familiar with. This would be my first time loading it, and a rifle that's not mine, and so that can create some serious issues pressure wise when you're not aware of it and know what to expect. If I were just to say, hey, I don't have this gauge. Oh, well, the load data from the manufacturer says 3.320, so I'll just load it to that and assume that I'm good. Well, if I would have assumed in this case, then I'd be starting off in a creating unnecessarily higher pressures than what I should be, right? So we're going to dial this back a little bit. We're not going to be jumping too far to the lands, but at the same time, that's why, I know everybody's got their own opinion about this thing, this gauge, because it's not a true fireform piece of brass from that rifle, blah, 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 and I get it, and the angle, it's not exactly super great, because when you're trying to take that measurement, there's a little bit of a cant to it. Well, I understand all the negatives, but the positive is it took me 5 seconds to grab this guy, add the modified case to it, throw the bullet in there, shove it into the chamber, push it till it hit the lands, come out, take a measurement, and realize I can't load it to the overall length that Spear recommended. I mean, that's why it just blows my mind. If you don't have one of these laying around on your bench, then, shame on you. This is a very, in my opinion, a critical piece of equipment that you need to have on your reloading bench. I was really caught off guard by that. I was pretty surprised that we were 5,000ths. If we would have loaded the Spear's specs, we'd have been 5,000ths into the lands doing that. So those are some things, you really have to take into consideration, obviously when you're loading for your own rifle and setup, but especially when you're loading for somebody else. Obviously you never want to create an issue where you're going to damage a firearm, potentially injure yourself, but at the same time, you definitely don't want to damage somebody else's firearm. And my dad at that, right? Because he's my dad, so he can still kick my butt. So definitely didn't want to mess up his rifle. But that's the thing, just some things to remember. Also, another thing on the component side, brass, you have to, figure out what brass you're going to use, what primers you're going to use. I ordered some Hornady brass today, so we'll have that coming in the mail. I just picked it. It was what Midway had in stock. And so, yeah, so we got some Hornady brass coming on the way. We'll use that. We'll go through, do our standard process of not a full length resizing, but we'll go through and round all the case mounts by running up over the expander and back down in the full length resizing die. We'll do all that. We'll prep everything the same. Load with H4350. We'll be using Federal Gold Medal Match large rifle primers. What else? And yeah, we'll probably bump this guy back maybe to 3.30. We'll be jumping about 15 thousandths. I mean, we'll dial it back. We'll pull it back 20 thousandths off what Spear recommended or what they tested at, and we'll be jumping about 15 to the lands. So that's it. That's just a different video than what we've been doing here lately. But yeah, hope you guys maybe, something to think about as you go down the road of reloading, or you're coming up or you have a buddy. I've reloaded for a couple of friends, and hey, can you reload some rounds for my rifle? And those are just some things to think about when you start down that path. So, all right, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope y'all have a good one. We'll catch you next time. Trying to get out to the range possibly next week with my brother. We've got a ton of stuff to shoot, ton of data to collect. We had a pretty big range day the other day. Some really good results, velocity-wise, powder, bullet combination, velocity, some standard deviation stuff coming. I've posted on my Instagram some of those results. So videos are going to be coming, but they're just kind of in the queue, so to speak. Yeah, that's it. So y'all have a good one. We'll catch y'all next time.